Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Dialogue, and I'm Faisal Rahman, live from our Islamabad studios. Today, we'll be talking about the future of Pakistan-US relationship, especially once Mr. Joe Biden, the 46th President of the United States of America, is in power. A lot of decisions has been taken, and interestingly, a lot of U-turns, I would say, have been made. Because when you talk about the previous Trump administration, there were a lot of flaws in their decision-making process, which led to the current crisis. Now, whether you talk about the economic challenges the Americans are facing, or the kind of challenges as far as the foreign policy are concerned, they are huge. You talk about the internal, I would say, polarization or the division within the American society. I think that is going to be one of the biggest challenges for the current US administration. And then on top, whether you talk about the withdrawal of forces from Afghanistan, or you talk about the Pak-India tension, or whether you talk about the overall situation inside Afghanistan resulting in the loss of precious lives. And when we talk about the peace process, it's not derailed yet, but obviously there are certain countries like India, for that matter, they don't want peace to prevail in Afghanistan, and they are doing their level best to make sure that the non-state actors should be supported and there should be a chaos-like situation in Afghanistan. Maybe it can trigger and eventually result in an absolute chaos, and you would see the disturbance and the human rights violations and so on and so forth. Now, currently, when you talk about the kind of efforts Pakistan has made regarding Afghanistan, I think they're tremendous. They've been accepted by the previous government, and they are still accepted by the current government. You talk about the overall very interesting area of cooperation, and that is about the military. I think the Americans will revive that as well, and they have given indications, especially when there was this statement issued by none other than the US Secretary of Defense, General Lloyd. Now, what would be the future course of action of the Americans in Afghanistan? That is also going to be very, very important for the future Pakistan-US relationship. And having said that, when you talk about the economic development, or you talk about the kind of military assistance, there are reports that most likely Pakistan is going to get the 8 F-16s. They've been an issue for a very long time, and the previous administration in fact stopped that. But now there seems to be some sort of a breakthrough regarding that as well. So to talk about that in detail, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us Professor Dr. Amina Mahmood Saiba. Professor Saiba is the Dean of Social Sciences. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. And we will be talking to Zulfikar Kazmi Saab, who is based in the United States of America. And Kazmi Saab is joining us on Skype. Thank you so much, Kazmi Saab, for your time. And we have with us Mr. Abdullah Gul Saab, who's a senior analyst. He's also joining us on Skype. Abdullah Saab, pleasure to have you, sir. Thank you so much for your time as well.
Thank you.
Ma'am, talking about the current government, the kind of challenges the United Nations they are facing, I mean, if you have to, let's suppose, pinpoint certain major challenges that they are facing or they will face in the coming days or coming months, where would you rate economy, the division or the polarization, or the internal challenges, their external challenges, and at the same time, this huge issue of COVID, ma'am, which resulted basically in ousting Donald Trump? Your take, ma'am.
Yeah, I think that challenges are both they are basically multidimensional, internal and external both, and we see that economic challenge is very high, and COVID exposed the US government's ability to deal with an internal crisis, especially when they claim themselves as the world superpower. And you see that they were so helpless in the wake of this COVID-19 as a smaller nation's government was actually. So I think that challenges are multidimensional. One is the limit to economy. Mr. Trump claimed that he will rehabilitate the economy, he will start economic operations, and he started direct rivalry with China, and that was actually having a very deep impact on US trade with China. On the other hand, you see that he claimed that he will put out US armies from different countries, and that would be, he will reduce the economic burden on US, and in fact he opened number of avenues of confrontation all over the world. especially in Middle East and in South Asia. You see, and in Asia Pacific, they are making a new alliance, and then that would be overcommitment of US again in Asia Pacific region. So external challenges are there. On internal front, he was failed to maintain the US status as a melting pot. He created economic, ethnic rifts, racial rifts, and US has been settling the problems of ethnic diversity and racial diversity, and especially in 1960s there were the laws after the civil rights movement of Martin Luther King, and they resolved this issue, and then cultural changes were there. You see that if you see the American films previously, all the blacks used to be the villain, and now blacks were the heroes as well. But Mr. Trump in his 4 years just reverted everything, and you saw criminal violence by the law enforcing agencies at the roads, and it was very detrimental for the US image, keeping the American values which they stress on. So it was great challenge internally and externally in the scenario which Mr. Trump left for the new administration.
And interestingly, when you talk about the rights of the blacks or the non-whites, let me put it this way, whether they're Muslims or Latinos,
people with color.
Yeah, people with color. Interestingly, now they have a female vice president of color, and interestingly, that is something going, which is very, very, I think, interesting in the history of the United States of America. But moving on to you, Kazmi Saab, since you're based in USA, and I'm sure when you talk about the overall situation out there, I'm sure you have a lot to offer. But as an observer and looking around, what sort of changes which you have witnessed over the period of last 4-5 years, especially during the Trump administration, sir? Because I happened to talk to one of my very dear friend. He's a doctor, he's an American, white American, based in California, San Francisco. He says that situation has dramatically changed out there. And he says that he has never ever carried a weapon. But whenever he goes out now, he makes sure that his weapon is with him, because a lot of rights, are expected. People are jittery, people are not having that patience level, and the economic disparity and the polarization is resulting in, in something which the Americans have never witnessed before. Kazmi Saab, am I right?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for giving a beautiful preamble, and it was truly, complimenting to the subject what we are addressing today. Definitely, America was 6-7 years before, or 4 years before, because America has seen a different, scenario in all over America, and American image had been distorted even outside America, because America was a country where we had seen the pluralism, where we had seen the coexistence, where we had seen a diversity of ethnic backgrounds, people, and they were living in harmony. But in 4 years, America was a different America. But it was a political situation. Now, America, how it could come out from that situation, it's the right question now. Because what we have seen now, that on January 6th, it was truly very different image of America, which was containing violence, which was containing not American true perspective, but founding fathers have given to them. But right now, they have to do a lot to bring back America, because Trump has created a different world. And it was not the world which was introduced by the founding fathers. Founding fathers had a compassion. They had a different kind of agenda to promote the humanity and to understand what America has to play a role in all over the world. Whenever people were coming here, they were feeling they have a new home. But what Trump has given to them, it was ban Muslims. It was, BLM movement was, giving some messages outside the world that what America has witnessed. So these were the issues which America has faced, and now it is not removed now because these are the images which we will see maybe in future as well. Because a very clear, minority or some people who they have voted to Trump, they believe that this election has been stolen.
Yeah.
But it's not true because election commission mean Supreme Court and other institutions has validate what people had given a verdict to Democrat Party. But there is a very clear line which we are looking for the future that victories will be there, differences will be there, and these needs to be adjusted, with the time. And I believe that American people will come out from this situation. So far, America has seen a different way of life. It was not American life. It was not American way of life. They were, meeting with the people when they were in the society with a smile. But there's a fear now. I have seen something on the faces of people that how they are, looking to each other. So this is American society now. So this present administration has a lot of challenges to tackle and to handle, and one of the major issue is their internal security, because what situation we have seen in past 1 month, it was not American situation. It was looks like that a nation's capital was turned into a war field, and people had seen that 25,000 people who were just looking after their security, and the National Guard and different agencies were looking to them. So my concern is this, that America has to play its
Kazmi
role.
Saab. But
within
Kazmi
the
Saab,
country.
before I go to Abdullah Saab, let me quickly have an answer from you. Since you talked about the internal security, obviously people, whenever you talk about America, you always think about the American dream and, everything associated and linked to it. Now, interestingly, that American dream seems to be shattered. Though the Biden administration, they've taken a lot of executive decisions from the word go, and they have allowed the Muslims to come and get the visas also. When you talk about certain Muslim countries, and earlier there was a sanction on them as well. But do you believe that whatever steps Mr. Biden is taking at the moment, they would yield results in the coming year, maybe in 2021? Or you believe that these fault lines have been exposed to a level that it will literally take a lot of time, maybe a couple of terms, and then things would just, maybe on the right track? Ji Kazmi sir.
Yes, I think that they have taken very important steps, because now the matter is the UN Senate, and they have to decide that what they can decide about Trump's, future in the politics, because it's very important to address this question, what people have in their minds and they are facing everywhere, So this is not easy to handle in a year, I think so. It will be taking a long time, because many institutions have been blamed that they have played their role in violence while on 6th of January. Some people have been named, and even there are some trial, situations with them. So they are facing something that how America could, come out from this situation, but it would take time. And meanwhile, America's economic situation, as you have mentioned in your preamble about the COVID or something, COVID-19 and a new phase of COVID-19, people are, are being scared in America. And hundreds, thousands of people, have lost their life. And there is some economic situation as well, because the economy is going down. So
Correct.
many problems, multiple problems, which Donald Trump had left, with his, departure. But
Correct.
it was not happy departure for the people. Now, Mr. Joe Biden has to see that how he could play a fatherly role. He's an old guy. He knows
All right.
that how to take care of the families, how to bring back America.
I'll get back to you on that, Kazmi Saab, but let me engage Abdullah Gul now. Abdullah Gul Saab, as they say, there's a famous saying that every rise has a downfall. Now, do you believe that a country which was the superpower, especially post the Cold War era, and whether you talk about technology, whether you talk about the firepower, whether you talk about the overall, the control of the globe through various development of applications and through Silicon Valley or otherwise, they have their presence, global presence. Not only the presence, it's being felt also all over the globe. You believe that this is the time the Americans, they'll have to review their foreign policy and they have to take certain extreme measures in order to bring in harmony, I would say, because wherever the Americans have stepped, ever since the Second World War, so things have gone from bad to worse. Whether they invaded any country in the name of democracy, or whether they wanted to remove any head of state whom they thought was a dictator. Look at what has happened in Syria, in Iraq. You talk about the Muslim world. You talk about the Arab Spring. You talk about the choice of the Americans and putting General Sisi or so many other people in power, removing the legitimate governments. Don't you think that has been the major cause of the differences with various countries, and especially the kind of image the Americans have gathered over a period of time? That image isn't what Americans were supposed to have. Your take, Gul Saab.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Thank you very much. A pleasure to be on PTV World and listening to the great views of yours and, of course, the our distinguished panel over here. In my opinion, the nations or the countries who are, not providing justice to the world, they lose the right to govern the world or to be at the top of the world. Like you have mentioned, past history, undoubtedly, America, one of the finest nations, and of course, their contributions to humanity in the field of medicine, engineering, social services, etc., and of course, their research in, as far as space is concerned, and so many things, agriculture, etc. Wonderful, wonderful. Of course, the medicine, we should not forget about the medicine field. So, but at the same time, they waged war unnecessarily. The past track is very bad. After the Second World War and then going to Vietnam was a great mistake. And then General Westmoreland used to say that with 500,000 troops, he used to say, I can still win the war. I need more resources and I need more troops. This war is winnable, but we have seen. Then Afghanistan was a quagmire, I would say. It was a great mistake. They didn't learn from the Soviets what happened over there. Unnecessarily, they engaged themselves in the matters of Afghanistan. And then, of course, Haiti and Somalia and so many other, and the Black Hawk Down. They always talk about Black Hawk Down, but when they forget about the involvement of Pakistani troops over there. Actually, it was Pakistan's 19th, the prestigious regiment, who came to their rescue. Otherwise, Americans would have been massacred over there. So this is a very strong history. But over here, we are talking about the future relationship of Pakistan and Afghanistan, and of course, the world after pandemic, what it will be. And what we have seen that India coming up as a natural ally of America, they have forgotten about the made by Pakistan. Pakistan was the country who was the frontline state against terror, And then, of course, in the days of Soviet occupation in Afghanistan, Pakistan was the one. And, from day one, it's a long, long history of, 7 decades. What is the result? Then, end of the day, they say you are strategic partner, and this strategy is. But I see that the challenges within the America, they are grave. And for 6 to 7 or 8 months, probably Mr. Biden would not be able to, concentrate on the rest of the world other than United States of America with their own internal matters, the ethnic matters, the financial matters. They are the country in the world. They have to see their economy, and then, of course, the social system over there, the social welfare system, which is the backbone of United States of America, which you have in your preamble. You mentioned about dream. What is that American dream? To live freely in America. America is no more a free country. You cannot go out for a walk alone. At night, police is going to follow you. If you are having a Muhammad, then you are in trouble. And the hostility to then, of course, their own, just like you mentioned General Sisi and others, and in Iraq and in Syria, what happened, and then, of course, Yemen, and then so on. There is a long history. But then when they kept quiet, it was a criminal negligence. It was a criminal silence by United States of America as far as Kashmir is concerned. They knew that they are part of that deal. United Nations, they were part of that. When the 18 resolutions were passed in favor of Kashmir, United States put a stamp on it. But when the time came, they kept quiet. In fact, by keeping quiet, they took the side of Narendra Modi by inviting him to Howdy parties over there and the processions over there. And our Prime Minister, Imran Khan, look at his speech in United Nations. It was a eye-opener, but we pay heed to that. And the Muslim world is they want that a dialogue, a honorable dialogue should take place rather than a conflict should be, developed. But Americans, the cowboyish approach they had, unfortunately, that cowboyish approach is leading them to a situation where Mr. Biden, in his opening remarks, he said that I will bring back the status of United States of America used to be. This means that he has accepted that the superpower status has been challenged. So this means that
there's no doubt, Abdullah Saab, it has been challenged, and it has been challenged well by some very legitimate, I would say, countries like China, for that matter. We'll definitely come back to that also. But ma'am, there was this question brewing in my mind, and it also reminds me of a couple of statements of the current president, Mr. Biden. When it comes to human rights, he has a very strong stance, very, very right also. He believes in that. Whether you talk about Kashmir, or you talk about Palestine, or you talk about even Yemen, he has given orders to halt the sale of F-35s and a couple of other military equipments, to UAE and Saudi Arabia, because the way they have used those equipments against the Yemeni people, it's a very, very tragic and sad story. But now, having said that, the Americans, they are, rethinking on their Middle East policy as well. But ma'am, when it comes to the Pak-American relationship, the non-NATO ally, wow, great. So many visits of the Americans, I think, they visit Afghanistan less and Pakistan more in order to diffuse the situation out there. So the role of Pakistan is very, very important, and especially when it comes to the military. Now, ma'am, that strategic relationship which you used to enjoy once upon a time, slowly but surely transferred into a transactional relationship. That you will do this much, so I'll offer this much in return. This is something which Mr. Biden do not believe in. He says that there is no concept of transactional. What is that supposed to mean? It can't be friendship then. It has to be something of a different nature altogether. But when you talk about give and take, that is something which is not accepted. The immediate decisions he took was regarding the revival of the military ties between the two countries. officers used to go to USA for studies and courses were not going earlier during the Trump administration. Now they'll be going again because that link is historical. It's been there for such a long time. And then, having said that, ma'am, the kind of dependence Pakistan always had regarding the military hardware, that was again on the Americans. So there was a very clear-cut shift from the US towards the East China. How do you see that aspect, ma'am?
Faisal, it's not very simple to explain. You know, Americans are not having any straightforward policy towards Pakistan ever. We were always strategic ally, and there was a marriage of convenience, and that came to end when there was divergence of interest with Pakistan. At least that was the conclusion of US interest in this region. They just washed their hands and went away. So, it is not, I am not very optimistic about the revival of military relations, because American revival of relations is never without conditions. And certainly in exchange they would ask to do more.
Now, what is that do more? Is it in Afghanistan or withdrawal from CPEC?
Obviously, first, because from CPEC, Pakistan is not going to abide by the American dictates. As you just mentioned, that we were having lot of dependence for military hardware, training and technology on US, but this dependence has been reduced now. We are not having that much dependence that was due to American refusal to give Pakistan that military hardware which we requested them. So, we have shifted our dependence to China, and in number of ways we are now manufacturing very good equipment, not to mention here, you know.
Oh, we are indigenous now.
Yeah, indigenous production. So, Americans, they know that that situation is not the same as it used to be a decade before. Secondly, when you enter into strategic alliance, certainly there should be some bargain from two sides. But Pakistan previous leadership has been has showed no intentions to bargain. They just accepted whatever they said. If you see the term of, you know, bilateral relationship during that period, you see that
post 2001, are you
post
talking about?
2001.
Okay, when Armitage visited Pakistan and the kind of proposals he had given to
we are a developing country.
He accepted all of them.
Yeah, and after that even we were on receiving side, and we were a developing nation, and we were the frontline state, but we spent first, then we gave them bill, and they were having cuts on number of, you know, heads, that this is not spent, you are not right, you have to prove, and then
remember the New Year's tweet of Donald Trump.
Exactly. So, I think that strategic revival of strategic partnership is not without conditions, and those conditions, one of those is to facilitate US withdrawal from Afghanistan with respect. They can pull out any time, but with respect. That was, you know,
that's a very, very controversial word.
Very
with
controversial.
Respect. What exactly is that supposed to mean, ma'am?
And second,
no casualties, face saving, are you talking about that?
Yeah, exactly. And second, you see that their growing relationship and growing ties with India, that is based number one on counterterrorism, second encirclement of China. Those both interests are there. At the same time, India is heavily involved in human rights violation, as Mr. Biden showed his concern about. Americans never want to address the root causes. You know, they are reviving their Middle East policy of Mr. Obama, but what Mr. Obama's policy was there, what Mr. Bush policy was there, all policies were basically to make certain nation example, to show their muscles as a superpower, and they failed because they overestimated their power. But who were the casualties? All Muslim nations. And since he was talking about human rights violation, the grave examples are Kashmir and Palestine, and both root causes are in American allies, what they did and what Abdullah Sahab mentioned just. So, I think that American policy is just to have face saving as when they talk about human rights violation. They want to engage the world, they want to prove that American values are there, we are fostering them, and as just you mentioned that installation of CC, removing an elected legitimate government, what was that? That was not according to American dream.
Because the government of Morsi, the Muslim Brotherhood, was not at all accepted to the Israelis.
Exactly. Americans
the
are
point.
only, and you know, everybody now it is exposed that Mr. Sisi is having direct relationship with the Israelis. His mother was a Jew, and his real uncle has been the minister in Israeli ministry. So we know that Americans are having some different goals, and they pretend to be different. We are optimistic about Mr. Biden that he would change what Mr. Trump damage has done to the world and to American nation themselves. But that would be not a drastic change. We should not expect that they would compromise their interests in India, as they are giving India a third role, the defender of American interests in Asia Pacific, in Indian Ocean. So they would not compromise. At the same time, they wanted to engage Pakistan to have certain leverage in Afghanistan. And by the way, we should have a conscious move in Afghanistan as well. Our military is very comfortable to deal with the United States.
Because I believe, ma'am, the overall situation in Afghanistan currently, as we speak, is not that conducive anymore the way it was during the last days of the Trump administration. A lot has changed. But let me put another question to Kazmi Saab here. Kazmi Saab, whenever you look around Pakistan, we have got 4 neighbors. One is India, one is Iran, one is Afghanistan, and the 4th is China. You talk about Pakistan and China. Obviously, the Americans, they have a very deep concern regarding the CPEC, and they believe that Pakistan should withdraw and we should not put all our eggs in one basket regarding that. Obviously, Pakistan maybe is a country which doesn't matter to them, but Chinese, the kind of influence they are having at the moment, that's unbelievable. And the way they are growing as far as their economic strength is concerned, that's unbelievable even during the Corona times. Second is Afghanistan, and we don't need to talk much about it. We all know what's going on out there, the way the Afghan soil has been used by the Indians to destabilize Pakistan. We have presented so many dossiers, but the point is again, sir, Americans know it, but they can't do much about it. You talk about Iran, P5+1 or JCPOA, you know, we all know what happened to that agreement. Now, they really want to revisit their policy and they want to do something about that. Coming to India and Pakistan, sir, every day there is this statement that the Indians are planning for a false flag operation, and looking at the current internal issues, it makes a lot of sense, because that is the only way forward for the extremist RSS regime out there that is in power to sort of bring the attention of the Indians towards this side and sort out their internal issues. Your take, sir, how to move in such a scenario?
I think for our friendly and cooperative relationship, America had to see that how India as well, you know, because what is going on in India, it's very eye opener for American people. What is happening with the farmers? What is happening in Kashmir? Everything is going against democracy, you know, and they claim that it's the largest democracy in the world. It's a fake, you know, ideology of America, but a fake ideology of India. But they are claiming now. Everywhere in India, there are some problems. But we have to see how America will be dealing while establishing and re-establishing relationship with Pakistan, because Pakistan is very important in that context. Pakistan has played a role in region to make a balance in the region, and it has a pivotal role, and America has to understand and to see that what is going on in India now. But I think that some favors are there in White House, because when White House decides about Pakistan and India, they see what is the population number, what is the trade, you know, situation with Pakistan, with India and America, and what are the democratic norms which are ruined up now. They start, you know, and they have focused all those things. But I think, as I have mentioned, that White House definitely have some influence from India side. Now, our Vice President, see her background. Now, see that how Mr. Joe Biden had played role earlier to promote India and American relationship. But meanwhile, I think that because the situation is changed now it's not the same as America has dealing before. It's a different scenario now. Now, India is facing a lot of problems, and America has to see that how Pakistan could help them to understand what is the regional situation and where Pakistan stands in Kashmir issue. So these are the things which America has to see and determine to reform the policy. About China, definitely Pakistan has a fundamental policy about China and Pakistan relationship. America wants to influence, but Pakistan has to see what is their interest, what is their future, and how they could save their relationship in trade partnership, in ongoing projects with the CPAC and other things. And about Afghanistan, Pakistan always think that peace in Afghanistan is peace in Pakistan, because it's very important being a neighbor, and because of some strategic, issues. Pakistan has been suffered due to Afghanistan. And as far as Iranian relationship is concerned, Iran is always at the side of Pakistan. I have never seen that they have made any different, standpoint on Kashmir issue, on Pakistan's internal issues. They always stand with Pakistan. So America has to see that how they have to restructure their policy in that region, while talking about China-Pakistan relationship, while talking about India-Pakistan relationship, and while talking about Afghanistan and Pakistan relationship. These are very important aspects to restructure the policy for the region. And I think that Joe Biden will play its role beyond all those things which we see that some weaknesses. Definitely, they are there, and we cannot remove them. It's a politics, and every power, when we talk about American, power and superpower, and definitely it has been challenged, as Brother Abdullah has mentioned, and you have mentioned. Now, we have to be sincere to understand what is the role of a superpower and how it could deliver to the world. So
I'll get back to that on Kazmi Saab in the third round of discussion right now. But let me ask Abdullah Gul now. Abdullah Gul Saab, I've seen so many interviews of your father, and he had a very clear-cut, concept when it came to the situation in Afghanistan, for that matter. And since he has held such important posts also, that he knew exactly what was going on in and out. And when you look at the current situation, sir, a lot seems to have changed over a period of time. The narratives, the friendships, if there is any concept in the international relations, or the interests, or maybe perhaps the convergence or the divergence, a lot has changed. That is what I'm saying. Do you think that Pakistan also, we need to look into our own foreign policy also regarding the Middle East, regarding USA, and regarding our neighbors in particular?
Well, of course, for sure, we have to revise our foreign policy. It is very important. But like Professor Amna said very interestingly, that a graceful exit, a graceful exit can only take place in Afghanistan, provided they, stick to the deal which was made at Doha. And that has to be that all the soldiers, they must exit from Afghan soil by May 2021. And which seems difficult, but at the same time, I must say that just now, 174 F-15 FE, they have been, given to India. They will be given to India. It's news right now by Americans. They have agreed upon that. So what does this mean? This means that you are going to counterbalance China by making India a juggernaut. it is not going to be digested very easily by the other regional powers, including Pakistan. And then, of course, a graceful exit can only take place if Pakistan is on board. And if Pakistan is not on board by giving them, a military strength, by building up their military muscle, what do you think? What will be the reaction of Pakistan? Then, of course, there are some good things which have taken place, like the Iranian deal. They are rethinking about the Iranian deal, and if the Iranian deal is going to be there, then of course Pakistan they will develop a soft corner for Pakistan. But at the same time, will they have a good relationship or a working relationship with China, with the hawkish approach in Biden's cabinet, with 12 important people in his cabinet who are basic Indians, and 19 overall who are, involved. Dr. Kazmi knows better. So I think this is the time that revisiting our foreign policy is very important. But also we have to create a foreign policy. We should develop a policy towards America, telling them that it is not just Afghanistan where you and us are together, but other than, you have to come out of the sphere of Afghanistan, the ambit of Afghanistan and, Pakistan-US relationship. No, it is not just this one common interest, but there are other areas where we have common interests. So it is Pakistan, like the foreign minister also mentioned, and my father, General Hamid Gul, always used to say that we have to go through, Washington, but we must create a way between Washington and Beijing. So Pakistan is the country, like in the past, where we have created a bridge between US and China. It is very important because the realities should not be negated at all. Afghanistan is a reality, Pakistan is a reality, India nuclear is a reality, and of course China and America are reality. If you are not going to accept the realities, you will not be able to exist as a superpower. Sometimes I feel that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that look at this, the designs of Allah, Wallahu khairul makirin, that the strongest superpower in the history of mankind, but the shortest lived. Why? There are reasons for that. So Pakistan is a very strong country, and I must say that if things like that, they keep mum on Kashmir, but if you remember that the last week of Obama's administration, when Joe Biden was the vice president, 68 defense deals were given to India. For what? This means that they are building up India. They are just ignoring the human rights violations.
And so looking at the history also, when you talk about the Democrats, they always had this biased approach towards the Indians. They were always inclined towards them. That's a reality. But last 3 minutes are remaining, ma'am. Quick comment, 1 minute each for the guests. Ma'am, what should be the way forward now? The kind of solutions you think, as far as the priority is concerned, how to move forward now?
For Pakistan?
Yes.
Yeah, obviously we should try to establish our relationship with the United States on sustainable basis, on basis of economy, and on the basis of social relations, on the basis of technology, scientific research, advancement, etc. And we should not bank, though it should be continued, the military relations, but we should not bank on that. And by the way, I just wanted to add what my panelists said, that they are looking India as a huge market, as a better source of investment. But you see that what is the situation in India as the social fabric is going to be torn because of the policy of BJP. Obviously, yeah, and there would be there would be least opportunity in India, because investors come when there is a peace, tranquility, stability, and India is going to lose all that within next 5 years, and then you can offer better option for the investment and for the for having better relation to the United States. I think that would be the better option for Pakistan's foreign policy in the future.
All right, Kazmi Saab, your take on the same point.
I think that economic assistance is very important. and people-to-people contact is very important, and U.S. civilian assistance is very important. All these aspects are more important than military cooperation. I think that Pakistan understands how Pakistan could play its role in future in military perspective. It's a superpower. It's not a superpower, but we are a biggest power, alhamdulillah. And Pakistan has its stand in the area, and so I think that while thinking about restructuring Pakistan U.S. Policies, we need to focus one thing from Pakistan side, that how we could understand our people, what they are looking for, how they want to re-establish relationships with Pakistan, U.S. Pakistan relationship. We should not go against their aspirations, and they should see that how the new alliances are emerging in that area. So Pakistan should not be dependent only. They should not see only do more. They should see that how they could get more love from other countries' affection. So this is very important.
Kazmi Saab,
They should, yes.
Pakistan has to have a proper economy. I think that holds the key, because countries like Singapore, they're so small, yet look at their exports. Look at that. I would say that export is not tangible. That's this. I think the human resource capital, that is also very important. And as you mentioned, the people-to-people contact, and obviously you can't just rule out so many options which you have. Over to you, Abdullah Gul Saab.
I would say that friends, not masters. they must understand that policy is acceptable anymore. And especially with the SCO on the rise and BRICS banking, etc., and China dominating the region, and Pakistan standing shoulder to shoulder, and the new phrase has been introduced by President Xi Jinping, that Iron Brothers. Our friendship was higher than the Himalayas and deeper than the oceans and sweeter than the honey, but now we are Iron Brothers. And they must understand that we can be friends, but we can't be subservient to their designs. And Pakistan is a square peg in the round hole of their new world order. Pakistan will, be never, going to fit in over there. They must rethink about their, new world order, which turned out to be a new disorder to the world. Instead of bringing peace to the world, they have brought wars. They have, been very unkind to the humanity, and they kept silent when the atrocities were going on and still going on in Kashmir and in Palestine. So what is going on? So I think dialogue should be initiated rather than a clash to be taken. I think this is my take.
All right. Thank you so much, Abdullah Gul Saab. Thank you so much, Kazmi Saab, for your participation and your time. And ma'am, it's always a pleasure to have you in the show, ma'am. So that's all we have for this. I'll see you again. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz. Have a great weekend.